We have a very special guest alert because the guys from Guilty as Charged are back on the show today to talk about why they are buying all of the Joe Alt hype and to give us the latest on the Rashawn Slater contract extension.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, and me and David have been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but it's our 8th season as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And today, we have the guys back from Guilty as Charged Part 2 of our big interview talking about Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, also why maybe you should temper your expectations for Oronde Gadsden, but maybe not too much on the Chargers defense, which could be a top 10 unit again. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Here they are, Guilty as Charged. Like, to see what Joe Alt did last year, and to hear the way that they're talking about him in this offseason before he's even put any pads on, to me has been wild. And it gives me kind of giddy a little bit just because it's like, man, what kind of like physical transformation have they seen from this dude to feel this confident at this point in the offseason? Because, man, I can't think of another player who's had more kind of offseason hype before training camp even started by his own coaching staff. And it's like, okay, you have Greg Roman out here saying like, yeah, he's an all-pro. It's like, do you know who's in front of him, buddy? Like, we're talking about Lane Johnson and Penei Sewell and Brian O'Neill. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. And he said he, didn't fear saying it. And then only to be one-upped by Jim Harbaugh, who before his second season has even begun, is saying that he's a Hall of Famer. It's like, is that not crazy, Steven, to hear? Like, what are they seeing with this dude?
I mean, I don't think it's crazy at all, honestly. Like, rewatching his stuff, last season there were definitely some games where kind of the more experienced rushers were able to trick him a little bit. Obviously, TJ Watt was like the main one, but TJ Watt
Or Taylor Heineke.
Yeah, TJ Watt gets 50% of his sacks by jumping the snap count, and it pisses me off. But anyway, but even a guy like Danielle Hunter got him a couple times, just gets in his chest a little bit, and that was like the main thing that I saw coming out of college is like if there's one weakness, he can lose the leverage battle a little bit, which makes sense. He's 6'8", and he was still, learning how to play the position and things like that. So if part of this physical transformation allows him to anchor down at a higher level, the only way that you're able to beat him off the snap now is if you are TJ Watt and you can beat him off, like timing wise, because if he is stronger with his anchor, nobody can reach him. There's no 6'8" edge rushers out there, right? That I know of anyways.
Right.
There's nobody that can can outpower him. There was very few players last year. Max Crosby couldn't outpower him. Max Crosby is one of the most powerful edge rushers in the league. Yeah. So if you can add that extra anchor, you're entrusting him more with a run blocking perspective, which there were some technique issues there last year, but again, switching sides, new run scheme. Notre Dame was a lot more like zone kind of stuff. This is more gap stuff. So now that he's more comfortable, his athletic ability out in space is insane to me. And he can just do things on the football field that most offensive tackles not named Penei Sewell, Lane Johnson, Rashawn Slater, Tristan Wirfs, like those guys just can't do it. And there were several times where he's doing a down block with Trey Pipkins and he'll come off to the slot on the opposite side, like 6 yards away. And then Najee not Najee, if it was like JK or whatever.
Right.
But his spatial awareness and ability to just go from point A to point C is like next level stuff. So the potential is absolutely there for this guy to be one of the best offensive tackles in NFL history. And I don't feel like the Chargers or myself are really crazy for saying that.
Hype train continues.
I think, I think Lane Johnson is like rarefied air at this point in terms of right tackles. Penei Sewell is kind of approaching that too, but I fully expect that by the end of his rookie contract, Joe Alt is just going to be a constant All-Pro nomination.
I completely agree. I don't have much to add there. Actually, I have more so a question for you, Steven, throwing it back to you. Now I'm interviewing you now.
Right,
we had messaged a couple of times about how, and you had noticed with film rewatch that they weren't asking Joe Alt to do as much. And then you mentioned on the show today that they didn't run to the right as much. That's not necessarily a Joe Alt thing. Yeah. So now with these All-Pro considerations, with all of that, like, what does Joe Alt in year two, like, what is that leap that he needs to take in terms of responsibility in year two that you want to see from him that maybe like Rashawn Slater was doing, but now they're going to ask Alt to do that.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that he'll need to be next to Rashawn in terms of that island rate graphic that we saw that PFF does every single year, where you see Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson are always like right next to each other on their own team. The Chargers gave him a good amount of help. Like, you can't help the offensive tackle on every single snap, but he was given a decent amount of help from a pass protection standpoint. And then a run blocking perspective, his responsibilities were very simple. It was often down blocks. It was often cutoff blocks. I would like to see him be given the more opportunities to be the focal point of the run game, whether that is setting the edge on an outside zone, whether that is pulling across the formation and leading up into space. I think he's fantastic at that. Again, his athletic profile there is insane. So just giving him more opportunities at the point of attack as opposed to the backside is probably the main thing there. So it's not his fault. I think part of it was like we just talked about with Ladd. The Chargers want to be kind of this team that's going to ease their rookies into their seasons, to their careers, and also the Trey Pipkins aspect of that too. So they didn't force a ton there, but I expect that to change this year, especially with Mekhi Becton next to him as opposed to Trey Pipkins.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that, like, I would love to see Joe Alt pulling and then running in between Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson leading the way, because, I mean, he moves like a gazelle, but there have been some conspiracies there about, the Rashawn Slater of it all, David, and that's, I think, what one of the biggest storylines this offseason has been.
Of course. The last big storyline about the offensive line we haven't really covered is that Rashawn Slater is in line to make a bunch of money here very, very soon. And so, he's a star. It's a no-brainer type of move. The Chargers definitely should be getting this done. We're getting to the point of the year historically where, the Chargers tend to kind of wrap things up and put pen to paper and get the deal done. Are you confident that Slater will have a new deal by the time the Chargers kick off their season in Brazil?
Oh, by the time they kick off their season, absolutely. I am so confident that if they do not, I will fly to Fresno and beat up Steven on a live stream. I'm just kidding. He'll kill me. But I will do that if they don't sign him by week 1.
I love that. That's a promise. You heard
that's
that
an expensive flight too, by the way.
That's exclusive to this podcast. You can't post that on your podcast.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Yep, that's lock it in right here on Locked On.
You have to do it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I have no concerns. I think Rashawn, when he was at OTAs, he also said he's very confident. Unfortunately, the Chargers are just this kind of team where they do these deals at the very start of training camp, but this organization can't claim to be the type that views offensive linemen as weapons and tip of the spear and like all this stuff, and then not extend Rashawn Slater. So I think the questions are probably, the overall, structure of the contract. At this point, the number has been set. That's just kind of how the way the market works. And this is a guy who's been to the Pro Bowl twice. He's been an All-Pro once. I think he should have been an All-Pro again last year, but that's just my opinion. So this is a guy who's one of the most decorated young left tackles in the league. Like, you have to pay this guy, and you have the money to do it. Like, the Chargers are not short on cash over the next few years, and they should be getting more now with all of these, new things that are happening. So I fully expect it to happen before training camp. The Chargers are not going to want to start everything that happens with their, I think, best player on the team missing practices.
Woo! Yeah, I mean, hey, I think he's probably better at his position than any other player, and ranks higher at his position than any other player on the Chargers. I think that's totally fair because, I mean, you have these kind of, you guys see it. You're on YouTube. You live and see YouTube comments and the cesspool, right, and the toxicity and just the wild conspiracy theories that pop up on there, including that Joe Alt was taken all along to potentially, supplant Rashawn Slater as the franchise left tackle so they could let Rashawn Slater walk for nothing and then get a huge compensatory pick for him. Now, I mean, you see it all, obviously. But, like, when you're looking at this team, it's pretty obvious what the biggest concern is. Like, if your biggest concern isn't that the Chargers' faith in their interior and those guys, Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson specifically, because they really love Bradley Bozeman too, and it's like he's there every day, and he pushed a dude who was a little too rough with Justin Herbert, lifetime contract for sure. But Steven, if you're looking at the rest of this roster, and I'm gonna make this clear because the whole Mekhi Becton situation that happened earlier.
Thank you.
If we're taking the offensive line off the board and the interior specifically, what is your biggest roster concern going into the season? We have more great stuff with the Guilty as Charged guys coming up right after this, including what the biggest roster concern is outside of the interior offensive line and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. But first, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friend's getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track all my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with daily promotions and fun ways to bet. And one of the great things about baseball season, double headers, and the Padres have one today. I like the Padres -1.5 in the first game they have today, and +1.5 in the second game today. But so much summer action. We got Club World Cup coming back up on Friday as well. But if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
I think Tyler and I are on the same page here that it's the interior defensive line pass rush. Not that Morgan Fox and Poona Ford were like these world-beating pass rushing defensive tackles by any means, but there was just a reliability from the two of them that the Chargers, I don't think, have replaced. I think Tier Tart is super disruptive and quick off the football, and I think has the potential to get there. But the other players the Chargers have signed all kind of fit more of a run defense, let's build that run wall, as Jim Harbaugh likes to call it, kind of style. And Daniel Popper, in his article before going on hiatus, mentioned that Deshaun Hand has kind of been the Morgan Fox role, where they go to 3 edge rushers and Deshaun Hand is like the next defensive lineman on there. And I understand why he's that choice, but we've just never really seen him be that productive as an NFL pass rusher. So given kind of the way that this defensive roster is built, I would love to see some pass rusher emerge. And maybe that's Justin Eboigbe, who's also had apparently a fantastic offseason. Maybe that's a different acquisition. Maybe that's next year's or this year's version of Tier Tart. But right now, there's not nearly enough of an interior pass rush presence for my liking based on how this defense was called last year and how I think Jesse Minter wants to play. I think they need like another piece on the interior defensive line to take some pressure off of the edge rushers and off of the blitz packages and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the Jesse Minter in Michigan, they don't hide it. They love guys that are over 300 pounds, that are more run first guys. But ultimately, you look at the rankings for Hand, for Jones. These guys are 100th or 126th in pass rush productivity, pass rush win rate. So I think they'll be fine. I think the defensive line will be fine. But push comes to shove, and you are in the postseason, and you need to get Khalil Mack might not have a great season. He might fall off this year. Tuli might not take that step forward this year. What does your interior look like? You're going to need someone to make a play. Tart was great last year. Let's see how he does in a full-time role.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, a good point to make. I really liked what T.R. Tart did in kind of short bursts here and there, but now it's his time to kind of show what he's fully capable of, So moving things over to the kind of offensive side, Tyler, we'll go ahead and start with you here. The rookie that's kind of had the best offseason so far is tight end Oronde Gadsden II. I mean, he's turned a ton of heads with his performance at minicamp and OTAs. The potential in the passing game is obvious. I think we can all see that. But the biggest question mark will his blocking be improved enough to where he can get on the field? What do you think are some realistic expectations for Oronde Gadsden II in his rookie season?
Yeah, really, really good question there. So I'll start with this, I guess. Stone Smart leaving was a bummer, I think, in my opinion. I was bummed to see that happen. But apparently Jim Harbaugh, very, very much so at the very last minute, was very much so pushing to keep him. Personally.
Oh, interesting.
There was a huge push to actually retain him. I don't know what happened on maybe the Chargers end, but I know Stone Smart wanted to go somewhere where he could play more. And I kind of understand that, like, that he just wasn't playing a ton. They kind of forgot about him down the stretch. So Gadsden is now that role, and I think a more day one and realized role there. Is his blocking going to improve enough for him to do this or that? I don't think it matters. I don't think him specifically as a blocker really, like, you didn't draft him because you want to make him an inline tight end. That'd be awesome if he could be a George Kittle. That'd be great. But I don't see that happening with him. They have a specific role for him. Go beat the slot corner. Go beat the linebacker. Go stretch the ball down the field. Go run a corner route. Kind of like what they were doing with Stone Smart last year, which, again, they got away from. Don't know why, but they have a role for him this year. As far as expectations, it's very, very tricky. I was looking through like former like tight end 2s tight end threes in like their first or second year with Greg Roman, whether it's with the Niners or the Bills or with the Ravens. And there's not really a ton of guys that have like great first seasons. People are throwing out like 400 yards for Gadsden this year. Like I think the most anyone had, and I can look this up while Steven's talking because I have it somewhere tracked, was like 378 yards, I think, for Isaiah Likely as their guy. So
okay, yeah.
And that was like, I liked Likely a lot more as an overall player as well. I would have graded him higher, and I did grade him higher. So what are the expectations like for him this year? If he can throw in 200 yards, I think that'd be great. And that doesn't sound like a lot because everyone wants 1,000, but someone's got to not be catching the football or not running the football. Like things have to go somewhere. If you want a great rushing attack with 3,000 yards, you're not throwing as much. Or if you want Trey Harris to have 1,000 yards, well, Gadsden's not getting it as much. So I think that like 200 yards, 250, but just like an occasional spark or even like a red zone threat for them in year one, and then learning how to play special teams, playing more on special teams, that would be a huge, I think, year one for him.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, there's a lot more mouths to feed on the Chargers offense. So they were not exactly the most hyper active passing game in the league last year, and I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. So the volume is just kind of a big concern there. But if you go back and watch like the first few Hayden Hurst games, again, that trust was never there between the two of them, but the Chargers were very intent on like scheming Hurst up with some vertical routes, whether it was,
he played a ton of snaps too early in last season.
Like he was open a couple times on like some deep post routes. There was a wheel route that Justin Herbert hit him on against the Raiders that kind of like sparked the offense in week one. So they were very intent on giving him those vertical routes. And I talked about Tyler Conklin and his impact. He's not really that guy in terms of vertical routes. Like he's more short, intermediate, control the middle of the field kind of guy. Will Disley's more of a flats, although he did have a couple like seam catches last year.
And a screen specialist, buddy.
Specialist. Yeah, there was a year where he was like the
best play in the playbook.
Tight end in the league, which is crazy.
Dude.
But there is a vertical element of the tight end passing game that the other two players just simply can't fill. Does that mean I expect Gadsden to get 6 catches and 75 yards every single week? It's probably more like 1 or 2, and maybe he gives you 50 yards. Maybe there's one big play in there. So I think there's definitely a role in there for him. And I think while I definitely have my concerns overall about his blocking play, I think he does enough from an intent standpoint where he can, come across a formation and go up against like a slot defender, or he can go reach up to the second level and get a linebacker. That's the kind of stuff he was doing in college. And I think they'll be able to kind of work him in that regard. So I just think they're going to be very intent in his role, again, being patient, but playing to his strengths because it's part of the offense that they want to work in there too.
Yeah. So makes nerd out real quick. Can I nerd out for like 2 seconds?
Please nerd out.
Me. So a couple things with the Likely.
You have a Stitch and a Pokemon in your Pikachu.
Yeah, of course. Like, we didn't think that I have Chinese. Let me do this. As far as like trying to find roles, if you look at, so I looked at like the average. So I was looking at tight end threes, looking at the average weights, their blocking rates with Greg Roman, etc. Like Gadsden is lighter than those guys, but the good news is he's more like an Isaiah Likely in terms of weight. So at the combine, he was 243. Apparently he's heavier now. I don't know, whatever. We only have so much to go on. At the combine, he was 243. Isaiah Likely was 245. And Likely with Greg Roman only blocked, and run blocking, I should say, 28.4% of the time, which, okay, like that feels solid. And Gadsden in college blocked 30.4% of the time. So you can see like, okay, that should work there. The other one that's also more interesting is the fact that Bischoff made that comparison to Darren Waller and his time with the Giants, of course, and having worked with him with the Giants as well and seen him with the Giants. Darren Waller, 238 pounds, had blocked with Bischoff 30.3% of the time. So in terms of like weight and how much they're blocking, it kind of fits with those guys as well. So I don't think they're going to ask him to block a ton. Like the average for Greg Roman in terms of tight end threes and their blocking was almost 56%.
Okay.
With those guys specifically at that kind of weight, like Likely, like Waller, granted that wasn't with Greg Roman, about 30%. So I think they know what they have in him. And again, I don't think it's going to matter a ton that he's not some great blocker right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I thought, like, as a move blocker, as a guy you need to kind of pick off second level defenders and stuff like that, there is a role for him. And like Bischoff also said, if we asked him to start, blocking 300-pound defensive ends, that's on us, buddy. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a bad coaching move. He doesn't need to be that guy. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing he has over kind of Stone Smart and Darren Waller specifically is he's at least had more experience at tight end going into the season.
Yeah.
Whereas Stone Smart was a quarterback, then a wide receiver, and then a tight end going into the league. And there was really nothing you could back it up with, right? But it did feel like he fell out of favor with Greg Roman late in that season, especially in that playoff game where they needed a spark. Maybe Oronde Gadsden is that spark. At the same time, kind of like what you were talking about, Steven, where it's like, not everyone, and Tyler too, like not everyone can have great seasons. Like, like somebody asked us the other day, like, is Kyle Kennard going to win defensive player or rookie of the year? And it's like, but then you're kind of rooting for like an injury to Khalil Mack or Tuli Tuipulotu. Like it can't happen for everyone. Like Gadsden and I think that tight end room in general is going to cannibalize itself. Like I don't know if there's a fantasy tight end in that room just because like Will Dissly's not going anywhere. Tyler Conklin is going to be a part of this offense because he can at least, handle. It's not an obvious passing play if he comes in the game. Like he's not that much of a liability as a blocker. So I do think it is one of those things where it's like not everyone can have those huge seasons. So I'm glad you guys kind of put it into perspective, kind of what the realistic expectations were. We still have more great stuff coming up, including why the guilty guys believe that Jesse Minter's defense could be a top 10 unit again, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Switching over to the defensive side, it's really hard to know what to expect from this defense, Steven, because I don't think any of us would pick them, Steven, to repeat as the best scoring defense in the league. But is it crazy to think that it could be a top 10 unit again?
I don't think that's crazy at all. We were having this conversation about where Jesse Minter fits in the defensive play caller hierarchy, and obviously there are some guys who've been entrenched, right? Like Vic Fangio and Spags. They've paid their dues. They've won Super Bowls, etc. Brian Flores with the Vikings has been fantastic there, and I'm sure there are some other ones like Dennis Allen in Chicago who will be good again. But I don't think there's any doubt that there is no other coordinator, offense or defense, who did more with less last season than Jesse Minter did.
Amen, brother.
And for all of the his vision, I think was we have these 4 edge rushers who we really like. We're going to build the whole plan out of it there. And then we have Derwin James. He's just going to cause havoc. Well, Joey was hurt half the season. Yeah. Even Khalil was hurt for a little bit. I don't think they got nearly as much out of Bud Dupree as they thought they were going to when they signed him. And so they kind of had to piece together the rest of the defense in different ways. And again, Derwin James played a huge factor in that. But you look at the way that they got production out of the 2 fifth-round corners. Very, very difficult task for a defensive coordinator. And then the emergence of Deion Henley, getting Troy Dye to be a serviceable starting linebacker.
It's good.
So if you look at the way that this defense is communicated and coached, it just has such a high floor that if you can get those big steps forward from a Tarheeb Still, from a Tuli Tuipulotu, from a Cam Hart, from a Junior Colson, from Elijah Molden, etc., then it can become, a legitimately elite defensive roster. I think even with some question marks at defensive tackle, but the schedule is much more difficult this year, as you kind of alluded to there. Right now, at least they're not going to face the same kind of, schedule that they did last year, which actually got worse because they had the Saints on there, which was Derek Carr. And then it became Spencer Rattler and the Titans, etc. Right now, it doesn't seem like those teams are on the schedule.
Right. But you just don't know yet. Yeah.
You just don't know. But I think, again, the floor is so high. And I think even in those games where the Bengals kind of had their number in the second half a little bit, the Ravens did, you still saw some great coaching moments from Jesse Minter in there, some great playing moments from the young players that I think it gives you enough encouragement to think, okay, what's the worst case scenario here? I think it's probably a top 14 defense in the league. I think just the floor is so high with this coaching staff.
Yeah, no doubt the floor is super high with this group. I'd be stunned if they were worse than 20th, which again is still probably the best defense other than last year that Herbert has had.
You're right.
It's also very sad. But they're going to face, I think at this point, just too much talent on offense across from them this year, where their lack of investments in particular with the corners, and really in the defense overall with Jesse Minter, it's going to catch up to them. They're going to face 5 all-pro receiving options from last year. And that's not counting some players that were just hurt and weren't all pros, but they're going to be all pro, consideration this year. I mean, Malik Neighbors, Terry McLaurin, Jalen Waddle, the Colts with their trio, Jefferson, Metcalf, Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, Rasheed Rice, Brock Bowers. It's
It's like you're reading like a bad ad for some sort of like the side
side
effects for
effects
some
included.
over the counter
Exactly.
medicine.
Yes.
That's what that list sounded like to me.
Yes, but Minter's got me
Please
hard for
consult your
4
doctor.
hours, and I'm here for. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, I think the Chargers are going to be just fine on defense, but I do expect in terms of rankings for them to take a step back, but for that to be a win for them. Like I don't think they're going to be a top 5 unit. I think top 10 would be a huge win. Frankly, I think that you're like 13th by the end of this year with those players across from you. That's a huge win.
Well, one of the pieces that's going to have to really play a part in them staying as a good defense is Tuli Tuipulotu, who has really had to kind of sit back and bide his time under Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. He's shown some flashes of dominance here and there, but also some times where he's just disappeared. What are you expecting from Tuli now that he is now the man opposite of Khalil Mack? Steven, start with you.
I expect Tuli to play at a very high level. I don't think he athletically has like a Pro Bowl, all pro level ceiling, but I think he can definitely be a high end edge 2 in this league. His run defense just gives him such a high floor as a player where he's so disruptive in that regard. He can set an edge against any offensive tackle. He can beat any tight end, as he showed throughout both seasons over the last 2 years. And I think last season, like while the pass rush production didn't increase dramatically, like you started to see some glimpses here and there of a guy who was figuring out a rush plan, where his rookie season was just like, I'm going to win with power or speed to power. But last year we saw him starting to figure out, hey, I can do a cross chop here. I can spin here. That little stretch where he was the starter, he was really able to kind of set things up a little bit more against those group of tackles. And I think even in the Tennessee game and the Cleveland game, you see a guy who's starting to figure things out a little bit of how to work tempo, how to work power, how to work his length, how to work his motor. And so I think it stands to reason that he will improve again this year and make a pretty big leap. He's not really been like a super high pass rush win rate guy to this point. But his effort is so relentless and his run defense is so good that I think he is at worst like a solid starter for you. And I think just the kind of player he is, opposite of Khalil Mack, I think works so well together. They complement each other perfectly, I think, in this defense. So I don't think he has like a star upside. Like I don't think this is, the same kind of conversation as Joe Alt or Dan Henley kind of year 2 starting breakout kind of options. But I do think he will be a very good player for this team.
I think so too. I love how he responded to what I thought was kind of their most embarrassing loss against the Cardinals, where that game, I think he missed like 3 or 4 tackles, got kind of washed in the run game. That just really wasn't him. And to his credit, he responded, with 3 pressures, a sack, 4 pressures, 3 sacks, 7 pressures, 2 sacks, 8 pressures, 2 sacks. And that's just kind of who Tuli is. Steven and I joke all the time. Last offseason, I think he went on one vacation, and he was like, yeah, I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to work out the entire rest of the offseason, because that's just all he knows. And he's so young. Like he still can't rent a car in some states, I think. He's so young.
He's still a few years away from renting cars in several states.
Right. And so I think this year, last year he played over 1,000 snaps total with 300 something coming on special teams.
Yeah.
Not having to do that this year is going to be so beneficial for him. So is he, Myles Garrett this year? No, but I think by year's end, I would like to see him push past Khalil Mack for best edge rusher on the team.
It doesn't seem crazy to me. It doesn't seem crazy to me. I mean, it does kind of. Khalil Mack's insane, even at this age. I talked myself out of it and into it. No, I mean, it feels like he can be a double-digit sack guy. I mean, and honestly, to be honest, he left double-digit. He didn't leave 10+ sacks on the table, but like a couple times, he, maybe reins it in a little bit and can stay a little bit more controlled around the edge. And when he's approaching the quarterback, he probably has 10 sacks last year, to be honest. So I don't think 10+ sacks is crazy, but we're running out of time here. Everyone is talking about the jerseys, right? July 15th, we are going to figure out. And also, I wore a Chargers hat just for you. I think this is like the 3rd time I've ever worn a Chargers hat on this show, just to show you guys how special you are.
Rarefied air, and I had to buy
rarefied
it for
air.
him.
David bought it for me. I didn't buy it for myself. But if I had to pin you each down, Tyler, I'll start with you to give me one jersey combination that you are confident will show up when we see them on July 15th. What would be the most realistic combination for you?
I will fly to Fresno a 2nd time and beat up Steven if they don't have one Navy alternate. There's no way that's not one of them. There's no way.
Steven, now if you have to be
he
right.
He got the easy one.
I mean, you could double down on it. It'd be a weak move to do it, but what do you think is the second most likely then? I mean, will we see yellow? Can I change the question? Do you think we're going to get an alternate that is a primary yellow color? Because that, I mean, even though I'm wearing a yellow shirt, you might think I'm in favor of it. Even though Tyler has a Pikachu in his background, you might think he's in favor of it. Are any of us in favor of a full-blown yellow all-out jersey?
No,
I will fly to San Diego. No, I'm just kidding. They cannot do yellow.
Oh,
no,
man.
Yellow doesn't work. And for the record, if your listeners are worried, like the whole Armari and Hampton thing is being blown out of way proportion.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Those yellow helmets have been around forever as like a signing option. Like that's not a thing. I think the Navy is for sure. I think the other one is going to be some kind of like darker tone as well, because they have the yellow, they have the whites. Obviously, I think they need a darker toned road combination, and so some people have kind of floated out like a dark charcoal gray or a different a second navy. I know it's kind of a cop out, but I'm going to say the other one is some kind of dark toned road alternate jersey.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I mean, yeah, I've seen some of those charcoal mock-ups and stuff like that. I saw a chrome mock-up today. Man, there's two, which throws a wrench into things. You know, that's what makes it a little crazy. But, man, those LT, white top, navy bottom, navy helmet with the white bolt, to me, I'll feel let down if there's not one of those is one of that kind of version. Because I mean, as people who all grew up in the 2006, LT era, like, that just, it feels to me what it has to be. But we are out of time for the day. Thank you guys so much. And more than that, it has been a pleasure to grow alongside you guys. And we don't get to talk all that often, but like we've spent training camps together on both sides of the fence, right? In the stands and on the field, getting to watch the Chargers. And like, it has been such an honor to watch this community of Chargers fans get the content creators that they deserve, but also just to watch your guys' growth alongside us as we've been putting years and years into this. So I'm so proud to know you guys and to call you friends in this space. And I just really thank you guys, for what you've been able to do for this Chargers community and being able to service them, being able to do a show with the Chargers and show content creators that something like that is possible. I don't take lightly at all. So I just wanted to shout out you guys because you guys do a really, really great job over there. And it's, like I said, a pleasure to watch you guys grow alongside us as we've been kind of trying to figure things out along the way. So they are the hosts of the Guilty as Charged podcast, second best Chargers podcast. No, but you guys do a really, really great job. And we all put out such different shows. Doing a daily show is so much different than, the type of format you guys do, and you can service everybody. And I really enjoy listening to you guys. So best of luck this season. I can't wait to see what you guys have in store and the information that you're going to put out there for me to use on my own show because I have to do 5 shows a week. But hey, guys, thank you again so much to both of you guys for making the time for us this week. We can't wait for what the season has for us.
Appreciate you guys for having us. Thanks so much for the kind words, man. We feel the same way.
Yeah, seriously, you guys do amazing work. I don't know how you guys do what you do. Steven and I always talk like, how the heck do they put up 5 shows a week and do what they do?
Crazy. That's why.
Hey, and you got to be right. So, I appreciate what you said about like us, like growing up in this space and all that. We have gone through, I mean, I don't know when you guys officially started, but like the COVID and Lynn era, the daily era. It's nice to be where we are right now. Not only are our channels growing, but also like the football might be good. I'm excited to do more of that moving forward.
Yeah, first ever episode we did was Chargers Domination Live, a totally different era, and we had someone screaming for Joey Bosa to sign his rookie contract. So we've been through the true doldrums of it, and this I can easily say is the best I've ever felt about where we are and the direction that the Chargers are going. But thanks again. Shout out to Guilty as Charged. Make sure you guys go subscribe to their YouTube channel and follow Tyler Schoon on Twitter, and as well as Steven Haglund. Both those guys put out really, really great stuff. Another shout out to the Guilty as Charged guys. Always love getting to do those kind of crossovers. And we'll be back with you guys on Friday where we'll turn it over to you. Probably a mix between Fan Mail Friday and maybe some buy or sell since we didn't get to do that this week. So hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter, Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page to make sure you guys get your buy or sell or Fan Mail Friday question in. Or you can call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers question or buy or sell. But to make sure you never miss big episodes like today's, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. But we'll be back with you guys on Fan Mail Friday. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.